Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about Chapter 13, Media Theory and Research. We're going to have a few highlights only because there are separate classes dedicated to media research methods. It's called Media Inquiry, and also for the previous chapter, Chapter 12, we have Media Law and Regulation. So, why are we even interested in research? For media professionals, research seems kind of necessary, but theory does not sound like something that a journalist or web designer would need. Well, it seems like today, especially, media has a profound effect on society, and in order to understand our jobs better, we need to know the consequences. Those theories deal with mass society as an aggregate, as a general, and therefore the first two kinds of theories were mass society and mass communication theories. They emerged because society got industrialized and developed. Major social and political changes occurred in Europe and the United States. For example, societal elites started separating themselves from the masses, and hence the term mass. um, Other than that, some people opposed that kind of elitism and called for more participation, more equality, education, anti-discrimination, and justice. So from that movement, from that sentiment, I think the word masses gradually, especially in a postmodern world, the word mass got away, and instead we introduced just media nowadays because many forms of media communication are one-on-one forms, such as the smartphones, as we all know. In that day and age, back in the industrialization era, a film became a very important medium for mass communication, and so a lot of the theories informed with film, and a lot of audience research, a lot of impact research is focusing on film rather than other forms of media. And of course, there were radio studies as well. So before we move on, I would like to separate two kinds of research. It is very important to know that there is quantitative and qualitative research, and this is one of the first things we learn in MCOM 186, Media Inquiry. The results of quantitative research are numbers, charts, graphs. The questions we ask in quantitative research are how many, with what frequency, after what, whereas qualitative inquiry means interpretive, explanatory, um, deep thoughts about the hidden meanings, the implications, and usually the outcome of such research, which we call qualitative research. The outcome of it will be a narrative and will be highly interpretive. So there are theories of communication, of course, that are speaking about the transmission of messages. In 1949, Claude E. Shannon and Warren Weaver formulated the transmission model of communication. It is very closely related to Harold Laswell's 1948 formula on media effects. It sounds like this. It's a question: who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect? Shannon and Weaver introduced a linear system of electronic communication, and your textbook refers to it as a mathematical system, even, because it goes from the sender to the channel in which the message is embedded, and it goes to the receiver as the final end. So it is a transmission model of communication, whereas one person transmits the information, the other one receives, or the other ones. So in 1954, scholar Wilbur Schramm developed a simplified communications model in which he embedded understanding as a basic part of human communication. And in this model, participants exchange roles of source, encoder, and receiver decoder frequently. So there is source, message transmitted, the signal through a channel. There is noise, because noise is what distracts, what distorts the message. And noise is not just physical noise, but it also can be other opinions, other influences, or even simply the quality of transmission. Then the signal is received and the message is decoded after which it is disseminated further. Other theories include critical theory and cultural studies. Critical theory of communication is influenced by Karl Marx and his notions of ideology, exploitation, capitalism, and economy. It is a way of understanding how to change society, how to interpret societal rules, and how to transform society as the final goal. Cultural studies tend to focus more on mass communication because they deal with cultural artifacts and cultural products and the culture as a whole. So on this graph, you see a model by scholar James Carey. It's created in 1989, and it happens to be one of the basic models of another model of communication, the ritual model, another mode of communication in which it's not transmission from point A to point B, but a participatory practice where people come together, the individual receives signals from the world of symbols and the world of objects, and they come to the individual and they go back to society. So it's more of a cultural scheme where a schema where symbols are interpreted and then sent back to society. So critical cultural theory is separating itself, is different from traditional or positivistic social science because critical theorists refuse to follow the physical science research methods and apply those methods to human behavior because they're very materialistic and very linear, those methods. James Carey developed a model of communication, as we said, based on a ritual understanding. It is more participatory. It is more about community, building a group, building group dynamic rather than transmission. And in the ritual model, individuals participate in some sort of act that has a ritualistic meaning. So more about that in special courses, but the formula for James Carey's communication model is communication is a symbolic process whereby reality is produced, maintained, repaired, and transformed. I would also say reproduced in some sense. So reality is produced, maintained, repaired, and then transformed through ritual. For example, the ritual of watching the Super Bowl, the ritual of theater. Every media product, if it's performed, if it's presented to an audience, it does have a performative aspect, and it does include ritualistic elements. Those elements, to put it in very simple terms, to make a very simple example, those include a time, a place, costume, sometimes food, sometimes music that have to be present, such as a wedding is a ritual, a birthday, baptism is a ritual. And so communication becomes something like that, where people participate. And over time, the initial meaning of that ritual is lost, but the core is remaining, and it is passed on with new meaning, transformed as a new tradition. So other major theories are media effects, in which we have propaganda and magic bullet, total control, and transmission of information. You can actually send a magic bullet to solve a problem. Media can be injected into a passive audience. Sometimes there is a theory of an empty bucket, viewing society as an empty bucket. Pain Fund studies on the effects of film on children, finding that the same content may influence different children differently. Radio's wider impact, it looked at the power of mass communication, and Orson Welles is an example. His experiment with the War of the Worlds. Television and violence studies correlation between TV and aggressive behavior. Limited effects, which is rejecting the magic bullet, says that media exposure can contribute to and often reinforce the individual's worldviews, but it's clearly secondary. So other media theories include information society, in which the prominence of communication media is seen as ushering a new era that breaks drastically from the industrial society. So in this society, information is key and industries are secondary. It is like superstructure is more important than the base. Superstructure being cultural institutions such as media institutions, and the base will be the industries. Political economy, inspired by Karl Marx's theory, again influenced by critical theory. This idea examines the production and ownership of media that determine our media environment and its effects on our social and political systems. Media ecology is the study of media environments and their effects on people and society. For example, in a media ecology experiment, we could actually ask people to stop using their smartphones for a moment, for a day or two, and see what happens. So it is the way of life in a media environment. And finally, agenda setting. This is really something that journalists are familiar with. They should know that by being a journalist, they're helping to set the agenda for societal discourse, in which, in this theory, the media determine which issues are seen as important and to what degree. So these are some of the theories, and again, I was only aiming to bring you some highlights from the textbook chapter 13, but you should read more because there is much more in very accessible language with examples that you will hopefully enjoy. If you're not a media studies major, you can actually either consider taking those appropriate courses that deal with research methods. Media inquiry is MCOM 186, and media law and regulation, MCOM 105. Thank you.